What an absolute treat we have for you today here on Locked On Blue Devils. Last week, my good buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated, talked about the 2022 Duke men's basketball recruiting class. Due up on today's show, what about 2023? Guys set to be high school seniors. What does that class look like for Jon Scheyer? We discuss all of that today on Locked On Blue Devils. Let's go.
Vital. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, proud to be serving as your host for this fine podcast. If you haven't done so already, follow our show on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils, and you can follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts, as you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it comes out each and every day. Due up on today's show on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Blue Devils, I'm bringing back my good pal, Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated. We had such an amazing conversation last week about the 2023 class, or 2022, excuse me. So today, we're going to talk about that 2023 class. And of course, all of our chats with the Sports Illustrated guys are brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. You can post your job for free right now at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. As I would like to thank so much LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football and college basketball recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. Again, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And with that, let's bring in my good pal Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting. How you doing, Jason?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. It's always a great day when we can talk about the future of Duke men's basketball. We joked last week. We have tons of recruits to always be talking about. And it's great that nothing changed since Coach K left. Jon Scheyer takes over, and here they are putting number one class after number one class together, it seems.
There you go. There you go, man. Yeah, so far, so good. So far, so good.
Totally different class for Duke this year than we thought initially. Tyrese Proctor was one of the 2023 commits who reclassified after the Trevor Keels decision to remain in the NBA draft. So I'm going to go through some of the guys individually here that make up this 2023 class. Again, Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting, is our guest here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils. The first commit in the class, and one of the first commits, period, in the Jon Scheyer era of Duke basketball, is a player by the name of Caleb Foster, an Oak Hill Academy product. We know those guards quite well at Duke. Nolan Smith and Quinn Cook come to mind certainly there. Tell us a little bit about Caleb Foster, Jason.
Oh, I love Caleb's game. I always have. I always thought he had, way before he had committed to Duke, when he was at Oak Hill, I thought, he was a guy with a lot of potential. And then he just kind of flourished at Oak Hill, even despite playing with future McDonald's All-American at the time, who's now at Kansas, MJ Rice, same backcourt. He really was one of the better players on that Oak Hill team. But 6'3", great size, obviously, as a lead guard. Like a floor general extraordinaire, quarterback on the court. His offensive abilities tend to overshadow his ability as a playmaker and a guy who has great vision on the court. But that's something that really can't be understated, because, I think he really is one of those point guards that sees the game a couple plays ahead, thinks the game a couple plays ahead. But, at the end of the day, he's an amazing scorer, knocking down that shot from NBA range, extended, scoring in the mid-range really well. And he's really grown a lot, picking his spots really well on the court. He's a guy, we're actually doing a feature on him this week, so that'll be coming out. And it's basically about how he's maintained his killer instinct despite being an early commit, right? So a lot of times when guys commit early, they're just not that hot anymore, right? They're
Right.
not the news like recruiting guys. I can tell you for sure at Peach Jam, they were at the courts of the guys who are uncommitted because they want to get scoops and stuff like that. But then, meanwhile, this is something me and Caleb talked about. Meanwhile, Caleb's over here averaging 28. He's giving everybody that work, right? So, and it's like people just haven't been paying attention to his dominance over the last month, and so he's a guy who I tip my hat because I've seen that so many times when guys commit really early, they just kind of fade away and they don't know how to take it when the phone gets quiet, where you have guys wanting to talk to you 10 times a day. Now it's just your coach. So he said he and Coach Scheyer got a lot closer in this quiet time since he's been committed. So he's a guy I'm very high on, and a guy who's flourishing. I mean, he transferred to Notre Dame High School in Cali for his senior year, and I think he's going to do really well there.
Well, I mean, I can't.
Shoulder as a 5-star, so watch out.
I can't wait to see what this next year looks like for Caleb Foster. Certainly can't wait to read what you're going to have out. Again, your feature coming out there for Sports Illustrated. Caleb Foster, there's commit for Duke in the class of 23, an Oak Hill product, and remaining loyal to Coach Scheyer because, again, in the recruiting efforts to get Caleb Foster, Jason, I know there was a lot of buzz about Nolan Smith, who, of course, at the time was on staff there for Duke and being able to establish that connection. But for Duke fans, it's pretty awesome that Caleb Foster is staying loyal to that commitment despite Nolan Smith, departing and going over to Louisville.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things he talked about too, and it's his developing a really close relationship with Jon. Everybody loves Jon. Like, I mean, they really do. Like, they really love to talk to this guy. I mean, Jon's a guy I've known for 10 plus years, so I mean, he's a guy you can definitely bond with him easily. You're definitely going to connect with him on some level. He's a guy. He's going to find a way to connect with you, right? So the guys are really taking to him, and so that's a testament to him as a recruiter and it's just as a person. The most relatable people are the guys that tend to be the most successful.
You just mentioned how Caleb Foster is going to be transferring to the state of California to play his senior year of high school basketball. You're almost good at segueing and setting me up for the next one, Jason. That's a pro move by you there because I want to go out to the state of California and let's talk about another guard in the class. Jared McCain, the TikTok world loves him, and here he is. He's decided to play basketball for the Duke Blue Devils. Tell me about, and our listeners, about Jared McCain.
No, like you said, TikTok superstar Jared, right? We call him, right? But the funny thing is, and this is telling, right? So he is very active on social media. He is a guy who's, I mean, for all intents and purposes, famous, right? But he's also dominant too. So that should tell you all you need to know about his work ethic. Because where social media, I mean, some coaches will still say this, but at the end of the day, you got to roll with the punches. A lot of them see it as a distraction. Well, he's clearly not distracted because at Peach Jam, I mean, he was one of the most dominant guards there for Team Why Not. So 6'4" guy. I mean, his claim to fame is his shooting, right? But he's a super playmaker as well. Man, him and Caleb in that backcourt. We had talks about. I talked to a lot of different coaches about it. It's like, man, imagine the firepower coming out of that backcourt. Caleb and Jared, and then they were in the midst of having like their best showing while we're talking about this stuff. So, but a guy I'm really high on, Jared. I've always been high on Jared when he was playing with Kylan Boswell when they teamed up in the backcourt. Kylan's now in Arizona, but Jared's a guy who. Once again, his shooting ability tends to overshadow the playmaking ability he has, and he's just a ultra competitor, right? Always brings the motor, always keeps the motor in overdrive, and he's just a warrior on the court. And so he's a guy that will definitely thrive in that system for Coach Scheyer.
So Jared McCain, the second commit in the class of 2023, another great guard from the state of California. We mentioned, and I've talked about it a lot on this podcast already, the success that he's had marketing himself, creating the Jared McCain brand, being a part of the Team USA efforts that he's already had. He's got documentaries out there of in 8th grade. He's showing you vlog footage of on his room, a poster wanting to get an offer from Duke one day, also wanted to get an offer from Gonzaga and accomplish all of these great camp invites and that sort of thing. This guy earlier this spring had a deal with Jared's Jewelers. I mean, he's winning Son of the Year and making great moves with his opportunity and his big platform. And then, like you're saying, Jason, don't let that overshadow the fact that he's a hooper and he's going to be playing for Duke.
Yeah, I mean, what's something he said to me that I thought was profound yet simple but profound was that you can't forget what got you all this stuff, right? And that is the work, and that is taking the game and making that the priority, right? So that's his mentality. It's very clear that is his mentality because, like we said earlier, he's a famous kid, right? He's like Mikey Williams. Kids, people line up to take his picture. Like he's that guy. Like he's like I remember I liken it to almost like Austin Rivers-ish. I remember when Austin was in high school and he had like a Beatles like following, and so Jared kind of has that too. And then you look up and you're like, oh, he's this, at some point this is going to be a distraction. That's what the old heads would say, right? But at the end of the day, then he drops 30, right? 30 in the dub. So, and he's consistently producing at the highest level, which is the Nike EYBL #1 summer shoe circuit in the world. I always say that because it's true. So if he's doing that and putting up the numbers and being productive in that regard, then I don't think we're going to have to worry about any distractions from Jared McCain.
You're becoming a Duke fan favorite. I mean, here you are referencing Austin Rivers recruitment, and here we are talking about our other 2023 guys. Jason Jordan's joining us here on Locked On Blue Devils. We'll continue the 2023 class in just a moment here on the program. Our show today is brought to you by our very good friends over at LinkedIn. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people you want to talk to faster and for free. You can add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I'd like to welcome you back into the Tuesday edition of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated, the Duke 2023 class. Let's move on. We've already given the guards some love. What do Duke fans need to know about Sean Stewart, Jason?
I really like Sean. I definitely think his game has grown leaps and bounds over the summer. He was at Windermere during the high school season. He's very productive there, but it's a different animal when you're productive over the summer, like we talked about. And so he's been one of the most productive bigs. He's like a utility big, so he's super versatile. A guy who's going to guard a lot of different positions, going to great face-up game. He can handle the ball, super versatile. But he's going to get down there and mix it up, going to grab rebounds, going to check off a lot of boxes on both ends of the floor. Super athletic, great finisher, great hands, and just a good feel. I think as a facilitator, he's pretty good too. So he's a guy who's going to, you can throw it in there in that middle of the paint. And so he's going to find shooters. Does that sound like something that Duke might like, right? So he's a guy you could probably even run the offense through there in that middle. Super strong, and his athleticism is through the roof, but he's growing in the mental aspect of the game. A guy I really think is going to have a lot of upside there in that system.
Sean Stewart, the third member of the class we're highlighting here. And then we've got one more to go, and we move on to one of the top players in the entire country, someone that everybody constantly is raving about, and that's Mackenzie Mgbako. Tell me what I need to know and what the listeners need to know about Mackenzie.
Well, we did an NBA draft, a mock draft, saying you can only pick high school guys. Let's say teams could only pick high school guys, right? So we did a mock draft in that regard. We did that in June, right before the draft. And with the #1 pick, Mackenzie went number one in our draft, right? So
Wow.
and deservedly so. I don't, it's always funny to me looking at post summer rankings and different stuff like that. But I don't know what other people saw. But I mean, if he's not in the strong conversation for the top player in 2023, I just don't know what we're doing. Because he was super productive. I mean, he played with DJ Wagner, right? He's a great player as well, number one point guard in the class. A lot of people think he's the number one prospect in the class, and I'm not mad at that. But I do need you to really think about it. I don't need it to be something that is just second. TJ Wagner's number one player. I don't know. I need you to really get a headache. I need you to really go to the war room and write down and tear up paper and have him and Mackenzie and a couple other guys on that number one line. Because I'm going to tell you, our SI 99 comes out later in the year, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. He's definitely going to be in the conversation. 6'9", super strong, super physical, but he really has an NBA game and an NBA feel. Like, he makes NBA moves with fadeaways, up and unders. His bag offensively from the perimeter to the paint is just deeper than the ocean. Guy, obviously, I'm very high on, but he's a guy that is just, once again, super productive, right? What does that mean? Just impacting the game on both ends of the floor in ways that aid the winning process, right? So, I mean, in every aspect, yes, he's a great scorer in multiple different ways, but he's also a guy who's going to deflect passes, a guy who's going to be a defensive presence down there, a guy who's going to definitely grab rebounds in abundance, and a guy who plays with that motor in overdrive. I mean, for sensing a pattern, let me know. So he's definitely a guy who will probably be the focal point of that class, which is saying a lot because it's a stellar class. But a guy who you definitely can run the offense through, and a guy you can throw the ball and say, "We need a bucket. Give me a bucket." And he's a guy you can give it to anywhere on the court, and he can get you a bucket.
Obviously, you just mentioned a pattern, and I want to kind of transition there again. What a big commit this is for Duke to get Mgbako to come and play for Jon Scheyer, and what would be his second season as the head coach for the Blue Devils. As we've seen Duke transition into sort of this one and done era, you go back to 2011 and Kyrie Irving walks through the door, and it seems like things started to shift. Jason, you're somebody who's so well versed in the ACC footprint. You're right there in Tobacco Road. You know this Duke recruiting profile. When you're out and you're evaluating like these commits, do players feel like Duke guys from someone that's not like, you're not in on these visits necessarily, but when you're watching and evaluating, do some of these guys just feel like, yeah, they actually do need to be in a Duke jersey? Like, that just feels right to see that.
Yeah, I probably don't say that. Don't get me in trouble with every fan base.
I understand.
But, yeah, I mean, I better not say that. But there are definitely guys that are on that they're after, that I could definitely say, oh, they definitely fit the mold, right? Like Caleb certainly fits the mold for a Duke point guard. I mean, he's, a 3-level scorer, but I mean, he's knocking out NBA threes, and he's scoring and facilitating interchangeable parts, right? So I mean, you look at how they played this year. Jeremy was off the ball a lot. Trevor was on the ball a lot, and then they interchanged that. You know what I'm saying? Then Wendell would be on the ball a lot. So it just, it's like a get the ball, fill the lanes. Paula, you get it. We're out. You're the point guard. Let's go, right? And so that's kind of how this class fits that mold. Like, anybody in these names that we have named can grab the rebound, start the break, and fill those lanes, and let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get scoring transition and get back on defense.
With those comparisons in mind, then I'm going to continue to pander to the Duke audience, and it's okay to kind of dance around this. Okay. But with Mgbako and the fact that, again, like you're saying, a draft of high school players, right. Mackenzie goes number one. Yeah. Is it fair to have Zion or Paulo Banchero freshman-like seasons, expectations for a player like Mackenzie?
That's tough. Number one. Yeah, I mean, well, to your point, he did go number one in our mock draft. So I
think so.
Yeah, I mean, no, he's definitely a guy that will be highly productive. I'm trying to so a lot of it depends on who's still there. Right. Will he get the shots to be that productive.
Sure.
He should, right? He if all goes according to plan, now he should. And if that's the case, yeah, he could definitely be that productive. He could definitely be as productive as Paula. I could definitely see him as productive as Paula. He's that good. Like, he's really talented player.
Can't wait to see him play. All right, the 2023 class is not done. Still moves to be made potentially for Jon Scheyer and his staff, and we'll talk about that on the other side of our final break here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, and once you finish our show, why don't you go by and check out Locked On ACC. You can get more on the conference by making Locked On ACC your second listen every day, as host Candace Cooper and the local experts, like myself, of Locked On take you across the conference in 30 minutes. Make Locked On ACC your second listen of the day. As we begin to wrap up today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils, again, JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated. Let me plug your work real quick before we wrap up our conversation. Again, you said you have a Caleb Foster profile coming out here shortly. Tell me some of the other things that you and your Sports Illustrated staff are working on, Jason.
Well, I'm going to give you a great segue. Caleb, this is good. So we're doing a Caleb Foster feature this week.
Yeah.
And we also have a big feature on TJ Power, who Duke fans probably have heard of, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're doing a big feature on him that will come out, I believe, on Tuesday of this week. So, yeah, definitely check for that. It'll be more in depth, and I think people will learn a lot from the story.
Well, I mean, I certainly can't wait to dive into that, because this is going to be exciting to have the conversation about the 2023 class. We started off by mentioning the fact that Tyrese Proctor reclassifies. Here's a scholarship available for 2023. 4 commits by a lot of people. Duke's got this number 1 class in 2023, but you can always add to it. You can still stay number 1 by adding to it. And somebody like TJ Power or Andre Stojakovic, it seems like, JP Estrella was a big name before he canceled the Duke visits. It really felt like once the Proctor news happened, all of a sudden, Jon Scheyer's getting back to it. His coaching staff getting back to it on the recruiting trail. And they do want to add more to the class, correct?
Yes. I do think they'll add another piece to the class, and I think it'll be a big piece. Probably one of those names. If they add one, it'll definitely be one of the names that you just said. So, and I think they're in good position for both. And if they swing and miss on a couple, then I definitely think that you could see, the joy of the world that we live in now is that you're going to have big pickings in the transfer portal. So, but I don't know. I mean, we'll see. The next couple months will tell a lot in the recruiting world, maybe even the next month. So I guess we'll see.
And we've seen 6-man recruiting classes for Duke before. So it's not like that would be crazy to sort of sit there and think about it. Right. The offers are out there. It's got to be crazy to do the numbers game just from conversations you have with coaches and that sort of thing. We talked about a little bit earlier in terms of the shots Mgbako could get. Like, who's going to be back on the team for shots, but then also who's going to be back on the team for scholarships that you're trying to send out to people.
100%. That's always and the coaches always talk about that's the how you weigh things out. Sometimes you just got to let things develop. And that's why you don't always fault kids for waiting it out, and wait until the spring to decide and things like that. Even though, with the transfer portal, kids are kind of grabbing their spots, just to lock it in. If they know where they want to go, they're going ahead and committing more so than they have in the past. There's a lot of variables that have to weigh out on everybody's roster, not just Duke's, but definitely be interesting to see.
You made some noise last week on social media, and Duke fans certainly picked up on it when Caleb Foster's out there talking about TJ Power's the guy to play with. Why does Caleb Foster want to play with a guy like TJ Power? Give us the
they had a duel for the ages at Peach Jam that Caleb said just left him like wide, like he's a standing 8 count. They both had 28 points. I think TJ even had 11 rebounds and 7 assists in the game. And both of them, you could tell, it's kind of walking off the field of battle, and you kind of hug each other like, oh man, you are a beast. You are a beast. No, you, or that kind of thing. And so it was the perfect. It's Peach Jam, so it's a circus, but it's standing room only, right? Because everybody, the news was like, they were already two highly ranked players, and so then when they started both cooking, the crowd got bigger and bigger and bigger to standing room only, and then there's a who's who of coaches around the court. So great setting, and so they both of them lived up and surpassed their hype for sure.
What type of player does TJ Power kind of translate into at the college game?
Yeah, so he's a highly versatile wing, southpaw, knocking down that NBA range shot, getting to the basket at will against whoever. Like, he's a guy who he told me when he was in Kansas City, when he really blew up, he had a 33-point game and then a 41-point game. And then that's when the Blue Blood Offer Party started. And so he told me that something in that first game, because the funny thing is in the 33-point game, he had 3 fouls in the first quarter and he had 5 points at halftime. And so he said in the second half, something really, he felt like his back was against the wall. And it clicked in him, right? And so ever since then, he hasn't gone back mentally, right? So he's on a level that is different. The next game, he had 41 points. And then he's offensive MVP. Then he's defensive MVP at Peach Jam. So, he's gone to another level for sure, in productivity wise and, mentally. But 6'7", great size, obviously, scoring on all 3 levels, super, super gifted as a playmaker. Again, he had 7 assists in that game against Caleb, but he's averaging like 5 assists a game in the EYBL. So that's a big number, especially for a guy who is as productive as he is. And he's tough, man. He'll get in there and mix it up. Comparison wise, he's almost like a Kyle Singler. And I know Duke fan, I gave you a comparison. That was your guy, right? Don't get me in trouble. But guy I'm very high on, and I was definitely wowed when I watched him this summer, especially to the latter part of the summer.
I told you last week I'm biased more towards those southpaws, being a lefty myself, when we were talking about Mark Mitchell. So here we are again talking about it. Jason, this has been outstanding. Thanks again for joining me here today on Locked On Blue Devils. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
That's Jason Jordan joining us here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to do it for our program today. As always, thank you for making us your first watch and your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks again to Jason Jordan for joining me on the show today. That's going to do it. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.